Hi everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to 0 to 1, organized by Doers Circle. And we've been running these sessions every week, one a week usually, sometimes twice a week as well. And today we have an exciting topic about venturing into the US market from Asia or somewhere else, but the reality of entering the US market is our topic today. I'll add our speaker Jane. She's here as a panelist, and then we'll get the session started. Hi Jane, can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can see and hear you.
Thank you very much, Jane, for accepting our invitation. Jane Pei is the CEO and co-founder of the Woof Agency. I'll let her introduce her business a bit more when she starts speaking. But Jane has had an exciting startup journey over the last few years where she started a marketing agency, which she will discuss a bit more as she goes through the presentation, but she had a exciting phase in this business where she expanded to the US. From my catch up with her, I understood that she actually moved to the US to expand into the US market and then experienced this herself. So she's going to share some of those experiences today with us. And this is not a hypothetical story as such. Jane has gone through this herself, lived the journey. So she's now here with us to share some of those experiences in a frank and open manner. Thank you very much, Jane, for accepting our invitation again. And over to you. I'll stop my sharing so
For
you can start
having.
sharing.
Okay, got it. So thank you so much for.
Jane, you're on mute. Okay. Yeah, I think you should be good now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Jane. So I am the founder, one of the co-founder as well as the CEO of the company. It's called the Woof Agency. So very excited to be here today, just to share about, like how we venture into like the US, how we started the company. And I think the way that me and like the team is thinking of how do we like organize it is really just, like I'll just share through like, very quickly in terms of like some of the things consideration when going to the US, and maybe we can just keep it very casual given that it's a small group of like participants as well. We can, do the Q&A, and if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask. And yeah, so thank you so much. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can see. I hope the audience can see as well.
So yeah, just a very quick introduction about our company. So it's called a Wolf Agency, and like what Yasses is it Yasses, right? Yasses.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Like what Yasses was saying, we are a marketing agency, but we just focus primarily within the pet space, and we do have our own like marketing platform as well. It's actually called Podra. And yeah, I mean, like we now operate in three main markets. We started in Singapore, and then we expanded into US, primarily New York, and then after that we expanded into Malaysia. So yes, so I'm one of the co-founder, and we started the company in 2019. So as you can see, right now we operate in three major cities. this is when we expanded into the US in 2021, me and my two other co-founder. The guy is my husband as well, the Chinese dude. So if any one of you have any questions about starting a business with your spouse, like feel free to let me know as well. I have a lot of experience and feelings to share about this topic too. We do have a Malaysia team, so this was when we went over to KL, Malaysia to meet the team. We also flew in some of our team members from Philippines and Indonesia to join us as well. So obviously the team has expanded quite a bit since then. But yeah, so like this is sort of like, you know, where we went over to meet the team. And this was in Vegas, Las Vegas. So every year there's actually this event. It's called Super Zoo. And when we moved to the US, I actually brought my dog along, which is the husky that you see in the picture. So we brought him along as well. So he was with us throughout the 2 years of expansion. We were in New York, and then we moved to Las Vegas, and he was with that. He was with us when we attend all of the events. So the reason why how this all started, right, is actually very random because a lot of time like people are, oh, like what was the inspiration behind this company? Like so niche, like so fun. But essentially there was nothing like, you know, like grandiose or like anything. It was really just because like I was in advertising. I was working a lot, burnt out, very frustrated, and probably earning like way like less than, you know, if I could have just gone to like McDonald's, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, because I heard that McDonald's is paying like quite a bit these days. But in 2018, I was really obsessed with this dog account. It's called Life with Malamutes. And, you know, they were based in the UK. People were booking their Airbnb just for the dogs. And there was a lot of engagement. And I think being, you know, like someone that's in the advertising firm, I always thought that it's really interesting, like marrying, you know, like attention with pets. And it's like pets with social media. Like I thought it was quite interesting. So I was like, okay, you know, what's there to lose? Like maybe I can just start a company in this space. There wasn't much competitor. I think there was none in APAC back then. There were a few companies in the US, but none in APAC. And when I first started the company, obviously there was a lot of people saying that, oh, this is crazy, like it's too specialist, it would never work. In fact, there was an article on Google written by another company that say that it's a good business, but it would never scale because it's just a very small market. So well, I mean, like, thank God, like, I still took a leap of faith. So, and the rest was history. So this is just a very concise version of, like the entire like timeline of the company where we got into Antler. If some of you know about it, it's actually a global accelerator. We got in pre-COVID, so we were one of the earlier batches. I think they are like way deeper right now. They're doing a lot more stuff, but we raised a small round from family offices and angel investors. So some of the family offices that we raised from here in Singapore, if any one of you is familiar, would be the Far East Organization Family Office. So they are like developers. They have a lot of shopping malls. We also raised from one of the Rothschild like family member. So she set out a family office here in Singapore as well. And I think back then it was really the COVID period where capital was cheap. So there was a lot of investment flowing into the startup space. There was a lot of glorified, like startups getting, tech, software, blah, blah, blah. So we did manage to raise a small round. And with this money, we actually built the platform and we moved to New York for first year and also Vegas because we wanted to sort of like sense check to see what's the difference between East Coast and West Coast. And yeah, so like it was part of the business extension plan. We wanted to go there to learn more about like the business, the city, and how US people work. So this was, I think this was at Utah or Arizona. I cannot really remember, but yeah, this was when we were taking road trips. And then back in 2023, that's where we actually expanded into Malaysia as well because there was this demand from the Malaysia market. And we also came back to Singapore just because I think, like traveling, being overseas, like really take its toll on us as founders and also as a couple. So, I mean, there was a lot more like nuances to it, obviously, and happy to share later if any one of you are interested. But right now, we are back in Singapore as the base, and we would just fly to US and Malaysia as and when needed to meet our clients. So this is sort of like, a snapshot of the journey right now. And I think today, like some of the companies that we work with, would be, like your Nestle Purina, so your Fortune 500 companies, Dyson, Aeon, which is the health insurance company. We work with smaller independent brands as well, like Carl's Jr., Hush Puppy, Yeah, so like we do work with a lot of different categories, but it's all within the pet space. And I think, for the past few years, we have definitely grown a lot. And also given with COVID, with the rise of pet ownership, people don't want to have babies anymore. They rather have dogs and cats. Definitely, we rode the wave. And yeah, I think like, it was, I guess like looking back, it was lucky that we started it before anyone caught on to it. So this was where we are right now. And okay, so when we expanded into the US, right, we didn't know what we didn't know. And in fact, like that was the first time I went to the US. Like when we expanded into the US, I've never been to the US before. I never studied there, never traveled there, never had any holiday. And yeah, so like for the first month, I actually, I lost 5 kg because I think my body went into the shock when I was in New York, but that was really fun. And I think, like today is just really a very quick overview of what it really takes to break into the US market. And I'm going to be very brutally honest here for anyone who is thinking of, like expanding or even starting a company with US as the main market. So I think the first one is really just being very honest with yourself, whether like, especially if US is not your home market. Like for instance, you're not American, you cannot just go in and out, with an American passport. I think first and foremost, like why do you want to expand to the US market? I think a lot of people is always thinking that, oh, I want to go into the US because it's a huge market. Like, there's a lot of people spending a lot of money. And these are all true, but it is also a extremely competitive market. So I think first and foremost, really ask yourself, why do you want to expand into the US market? The second one is that, is US the only market to achieve your goal? Because if you look at it, like outside of the US, there's the Europe market, there is the APAC Southeast Asia, there's also ANZ, which are huge, huge markets as well with a lot of potentials, very fragmented. So again, like very huge potential. And again, is US the only market to achieve your goal? Because it is actually really expensive and it's really far away from Singapore. So you'll be away from, like everything that you have grown up with. And that is a huge consideration, even though right now it seems that, oh, that's fine, like I'm a grown up, I can do it. But when you're there alone, like it's very different. So are there also any pull signals from the US prospects? So one of the main considerations of why we decided to go to the US was really because we actually do have clients or agencies that reach out to us when we were in Singapore, asking us to help them on their campaign. And one of the main clients was actually Nestle Purina in the US. So I think back then it was quite surprising because for us, we were like, oh, why would you want to work with us? Because literally, like we are hundreds of miles away from each other and the time zone difference is insane, like because they were based in New York. And we're like, why would you want to work with this like random Singapore startup, right? And I think, like after we started communicating with them, after we started working, we just realized that there is white space in this market, at least, like for an agency to specialize within the pet industry. And it was just something that they look for, even though we are not based in the US. So they really did jump through the hoop with, the legality, the administrative work, and just, like making do with the time zone difference. And I think that was one of the pull signal from a US prospect that, hey, like there's something going on. And obviously, it's not just Purina US. We do have other clients as well. Interestingly, a lot of Chinese companies, so companies that are operating out of China who wants to market in the US. But again, because of the tension between two countries and its very, very different way of working, we are in a very good space where we strike a balance between both continents because we are Asian, so we can speak Chinese with them. Our way of working is fairly
Jane,
similar.
excuse me.
Yeah,
Jane,
yeah.
your voice at times drops. Maybe if you can speak a bit louder. At times it drops.
Okay, then if that's okay, just let me know if like you guys can't
That's
hear me.
better.
I'll speak a little
That's
bit
much
louder.
better. Much better.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, so I think yeah, I was saying that, like we work with Chinese companies as well, where they will actually come to us just because there's a lot of cultural tension between two countries, US and China, and it's even worse now with the new administration. But back then, I think with the cultural differences, it was actually very difficult for both markets to work together. So I think we strike a very good balance where we can speak Chinese, we are Asian, so we can work well with the Chinese, and we are also based in the US and have experience working with the Americans, and we can work with, like the Americans. So I think that was a good white space. And I think, like, again, do you have any existing customers or portfolio that you can build off? Because I think a lot of people might think that, right now I want to go to the US and start, from scratch, right? But I mean, it's possible, but it's just that it's going to take a while. And you need to have really deep pockets, which brings me to my second consideration. It's an expensive country to do business in. So when we were in New York, this is the monthly cost of living, and it doesn't include like food and drinks and any necessities or even like having fun. Our studio room rental, like on a monthly basis, was about 4,000 USD. These are all in USD, which means it's about 48,000 a year, and it's literally just like a room. Like there is no bedroom. It's just a very small space. But it is in an apartment, which makes us feel safe. So that is sort of like the pros and cons. And we were living in Long Island City, where there's a lot of Asian, and it was near. So it wasn't even inside Manhattan in the city. So it was 4K a month, very expensive. Income tax, if let's say you're earning about 100K annual, it's about 28 to 30%, depending on whether are you married, which state are you living in, because there is like your federal tax, which is the US tax, the New York tax, and Long Island City tax. So there's like 3 tiers, right? So a lot of people actually move really suburban or outside of New York. So I have a friend who lives about 1 hour train ride away from the Manhattan city, just to save on, some of the cost of living. So it's actually really expensive. And I remember walking down the street one day with my husband and saying that it's crazy, because as a Singaporean, I don't think you would ever have this sort of like thinking. But at that moment, I was like, oh shit, like I am not rich enough. I cannot afford to live in this city. Like I was just walking down the street and literally thinking about that. So I think, like for the same annual income, if you're earning 100K in Singapore, your quality of life is going to be so much higher, because we do have cheap food, things are affordable. And of course, like I think it's an outlier, because in a lot of different countries, people do spend quite a bit on rent and food as well, even like for Malaysia, like other like Asian countries. But I think I guess we are very privileged as Singaporeans. And I think, you will need at least 76,000 a year to just exist in New York City. And this is also one of the reasons why we moved to Las Vegas, because Las Vegas doesn't have state tax, because the income is all coming in from the casinos and the tourism, and they only have federal tax. So it's slightly cheaper, but it is still expensive to live in the US and to do business there. So that's why going back to the first point, it's like you want to make sure that you have some sort of pull signal before you really move there, unless you have extremely deep pockets and you can afford to live there for the next 1 to 2 years with zero income and just building off your business, which there are a lot of people that is doing that in New York when I was there. So yeah, I mean, like, consideration number 3 is that you are really starting from ground zero. So you have to relearn everything. Way of working is very different. The way that you pitched in Asia is very different from the way you pitch in US. In US, people are very direct, straightforward, and aggressive. In Asia, that can come off as very rude and lack of boundary. So you really have to internalize all this, and we are talking to different TAs. Like, you need to make sure that it's the right approach. So I think that's one. Making new friends. I think New York is not as bad, because there's a lot of people that like are transients, like they're there. But I think making new friends like takes an effort, especially if you're slightly older. So when I was in New York, I was in my late 20s, so I feel like I still have a lot of energy. But now that I am approaching my mid 30s, it's very hard, right? Like, it's very hard for me to have roommates or to go out and drink and socialize. I just want to like stay home. And it's going to be very difficult if you are alone, because these people are not going to come to you. Like, you need to take the initiative to go to them. And maybe some of the audiences that are, like maybe you guys are foreigners in Singapore, you guys would feel the same way as well, where you really need to make an effort to go out and meet new friends. Cultural nuances, of course, there's a few. subtle like racism. I think this cannot be avoided. I think, and I'm just gonna say it as it is. I think as a Chinese in Singapore, like we are definitely privileged, right? Because majority of the races here are Chinese, like a lot of people like celebrate Chinese festivals. So it's definitely it's almost like we are the white people in US, like as much as, I hate to say this, but it's I think like when you move to US, like you can feel the difference, right? Like you're no longer like the majority in a country, especially since you are a foreigner. There's always going to be subtle racism. Your accent, people are going to judge you for that. People are going to judge you based on what you think. There's a very different in thinking and perception. There's also people are going to judge you based on what you dress as well, right? So I think with New York, like people definitely are a little bit more judgmental. And it really again depends on what's your vibe. So when I was in San Francisco, people judge you based on like what's your role. Like if you're a software engineer, like you're at the peak of the pyramid, right? Like you're like king. And if you're just like, media or something, like nobody gives a shit about you. But maybe in LA, like people would care about who you know, like are you popular? Do you have a lot of followers on Instagram? So I think like different cities have different vibes. And in New York, like definitely people do care about whether are you rich, like where are you living? Like people would ask you like which neighborhood are you living to suss out like are you rich or not? Because there are certain neighborhood that has really expensive rent. Mannerisms, speaking, and I think just trying to navigate a new environment as a foreigner. So for us, I think it's very important to have a support system, and we were very lucky because not only do we have friends that are working in New York, but there's also this network by Singapore SGN, Singapore Global Network, where there is a Telegram channel, there's a WhatsApp channel you can tap into, you can meet Singaporeans. But then again, it's a double-edged sword because I think when you're overseas, you don't want to just mingle with Singaporeans all the time. You want to take a step out of your comfort zone as well to meet like people from other like culture, not just within New York, like maybe in Eastern Europe or like Middle East or some, like places where you wouldn't really like go to, like if let's say you are in Singapore, or people that you won't really come into contact just because they don't come to Singapore. So I think this is also one of the consideration. And I'm very lucky because my husband is my co-founder. So we do have a support system, and I brought my dog there as well. So he was with me. But if you are going as a solopreneur, it's gonna be challenging. I'm not gonna lie. So you need to be mentally prepared. But I think that being said, right, if you want something you have never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done. So you know, I don't know who is Thomas Jefferson, but I think like he has a point lah. Like I think I look back again at our journey where we have gone, like the things that we have learned, all of the challenges and difficulty is challenging, but I would never swap it for anything because those has been really helpful right now when we are pitching and closing clients in the US. Definitely, it is not as easy or fast as I would like it to be. We took much longer as I expected, but we are at a place right now, or at a position right now where the company has made certain then I would say in the US market where we are published on BBC Global, Morning Brew, pet food industry, which are all US based publications, just because like of the impact or the things that we have done in the past few years. Yeah, so yeah, I would say that these are the three considerations. Very short, because this is a short session. But if you guys have any other question, we can do it in the Q&A, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share my thoughts. Yeah, so that's all from my side. We can go to
Yeah,
Q&A.
yeah, thank you very much, Jen. I think that's super helpful and I think very insightful because it's all your experience, right? It's not a theoretical presentation. You actually done this yourself, lived the journey, and then sharing your experiences. Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions. One here in the chat, Jane. Administration wise, how long did you spend time for establishing LLC or equal to operate your business in the USA, and any tips related to business administration?
There's two parts to this. I think the first part is that my co-founder, which is my husband, is the one that manages all of our finances and operations. But from what I know, what we did is that we set up a Delaware C Corp. Uh, yeah, we set up a Delaware C Corp because that's the easiest, and it is actually a pretty fast. I think it's very fast. It's not like hard to set up like a business in US. I think the challenging part is when you're reporting like your taxes. So tax season just passed, which is 2 weeks ago, and he was going insane working over the weekends because in the US, like they don't tell you like what to do. That's number one. Number two is that if you miss out on any like submission and they find out, I think you get fined like $25,000 and they don't tell
Wow.
you. Like maybe 5 years later, they suddenly remember and they say, "Oh, you owe us 25,000 plus all of the interest." I think that's why the IRAS is so big. Like they earn billions every year. But I think that was one of it. I'm happy to like connect offline because I'm not the best person to advise on this because I wasn't the one that went through the entire process. But happy to connect offline with my co-founder so that he can answer any specific questions that you have. But based on what I know, like it's pretty fast and straightforward to set up a business in the US, but the maintenance is the one that is horrible. And another thing is that there's also this grant by Singapore government. It's called the MRA grant, overseas like expansion. And if you apply for it, I believe that you are able to offset certain amount of the business setup fees up to like 20,000, I think. Back then, we didn't take advantage of it because we had a client that urgently needed to pay us. So we just went ahead with the setup. But yeah, like I think like the Singapore government do have this grant. It's called MRA. So that's one. I think that's more for the LLC. Well, visa is a pain in the ass. I think for us, like we did the H1B1 visa, which is only H1B, sorry, not H1B1, H1B, which is only for two countries. I believe it is Singapore and I think it's Brunei. I cannot remember which one was the other market country. But because, like, for example, every year they have 100 slots, but there's not a lot of Singaporeans that go to the US. So you will always have slot to a certain extent. So we are lucky as compared to other nationality like China, India, where they have to compete for H1B1. So for us, it was H1B and we got it. But you do have to go through the entire process. Again, you need to engage a lawyer. You need to go to the embassy to do an interview and they treat you like a criminal. No offense to anyone who's from America here. They ask you a lot of questions. Yes, like it's because they want to make sure that you're not there to do illegal stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so it's a pretty long process. But if you're a Singaporean, you can actually go into US with B1 visa. So it doesn't allow you to do any business. You're just there for business meeting to just really understand the market. But you can stay there for 6 months. And I think this is a good way for you to gauge whether do you want to expand into the market and really start to do business there without paying tax. Yeah, but you
Right.
just have to be very careful with like the visa. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Jane, just on the previous question, I know you mentioned your co-founder is a better place to answer the business registration question. But in case I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you have had a Delaware registration. I guess you still have that registration. Something that I've heard from our founders in our community is that Delaware registrations are okay to run a business, but if you're looking at fundraising, attracting investors, etc., that's a pretty weak setup. Is that true?
I am not sure. Like I cannot
Mm-hmm.
answer this question because I'm not an
Sure.
expert, but I believe like yeah, I don't think there's any like main constraint. I guess like if let's say you really want to raise from US, like you're so sure
Mm-hmm.
that US is your main market, you probably need to do an asset flip. So back then when we
Right.
raised, right, it was everything was under the Singapore like company. So, the
Right.
funds and everything is under Singapore. But if let's say, like in the US, like you manage to raise your ABC, series ABC and, like you
Yeah.
really set up there, then I think you probably need to do an asset flip because for the investors, they want to invest in the US entity and not a
US
foreign
company.
entity
Yeah.
due to tax reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is other question from Iris. Why you would choose setting business in US but not SG at the very beginning? I guess in your case, you actually had a SG registration from the beginning and then you expanded to US, but you can touch on this question as well.
We actually, so thanks Iris for the question. We actually started the company in Singapore. So we were running closing deals in Singapore. But I think like we always knew that Singapore is a very small market, especially for the pet space. And this was even before COVID and the rise of pet ownership. So I think there are a lot of big companies here whereby they do spend money on marketing and stuff, but because it's such a small market, they don't spend a lot of money. So I think, like when Purina came in, we saw the budget, we saw how they are running their campaigns. I think that was when we realized that, hey, there's a lot more opportunities and potential just from a market standpoint, because I think Americans spend a lot of money on their pets, and there's a lot more pets in America as compared to in Singapore. So, not saying that Singapore is a bad market. I think maybe it's just because of the industry that we are in. Singapore is just a very small market for us. So, it would never bring us to the kind of revenue that we are at right now. In fact, more than 50% of our revenue right now is coming from the US.
Right. Jen, from your explanation, you have Malaysia as an execution center, right? So your costs probably are kind of managed by having a center in Malaysia. So with that Malaysian setup, can you actually still serve markets like US, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, UK maybe? Is that a possibility?
Okay, when we first extended into the US, right, I actually have all of my team members based in Singapore. And I think this might be a very sensitive topic for certain people, but I think for the same salary, like, okay, so back then, I'm going to be very transparent, right, because it's a small group. So I think back then in Singapore, we were hiring like managers with maybe 2 to 3 years of experience, and we were paying about 4 to 5,000 Sing dollars a month. And I think at that point, the first one was that they don't have enough experience in the space that they're operating within, so the role. And number two is that all of the founders were in US and there was no real like managers or people to lead them. So I think that caused them, this group of employees, right? They were juniors. There was nobody to really guide them. They were being thrown to do things by themselves. And on that, I think that was definitely one of the mistakes that I have made as a manager and as a founder, where I just expected them to be able to run things. And of course, like it didn't work out. So they left the company. And at that point of time, it was COVID. So during COVID, and also because we were overseas in US, we were all forced to learn how to operate online and to do business online. So
Right,
I
yeah.
think Malaysia, yeah, so Malaysia became one of the market that we look at. And right now
Hmm.
we only hire seniors the in the company. So everyone has at least like 10 years of experience, 8 to 10 years of experience, and we are paying about like 10, 15,000 ringgit to each of them, right? So I think it's not about like a money problem. Definitely the currency discrepancy plays an advantage to us since we are charging in USD and we are paying in ringgit. But I think one of the headspace that we have is that we are hiring from Malaysia not because we want to save money. I think like it's a little bit of both. It's like we want to look for experience, but at the same time, I don't think we're at a point where we can hire a full team of Americans. And even then, we do have staff in American right now. So we have an account director in New York handling some of our US clients that are a little bit more important lah, that like the revenue and all like is substantial. But I would say that other than the cultural like context, which me and my co-founder is actually able to provide from a strategic standpoint to the client, the executional work like our APAC team members do as well or even better than some of the Americans. So yeah, I think the only difference is that they are not in the US market, but they are performing excellent and delivering excellent work to our US clients. Yeah, and I think like this is also one of the reasons why we have managed to grow and work with a lot of huge companies in the US, even though we do have team members that are based in APAC serving them. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a couple of more questions here in the chat, and then we'll move to Q&A section also. Uh, this one, have you been sued by a customer or faced any legal issues? One founder said it is a question of when, not if you will be sued. Thoughts?
So we haven't been sued before, but there was this issue that happened. So we had an influencer that did a campaign for this brand, and I think there was a misunderstanding because she posted a photo and everything, but her understanding was that the brand only had the rights to use her video and not her cover image, right? And what the brand did was that they used that specific photo on the Ellen show, and the influencer saw it and she wanted to sue the brand. And we were just kind of like stuck in the middle because we are the agency that brokered the deal.
Yeah,
So I mean, long
right.
story short, we managed to come to a resolution. But yes, we have heard of a lot of stories where people would, like sue the company saying that it's not disabled friendly. A lot of different things where people try to take advantage of companies. And I'm just gonna be an asshole here, but because we are not in US, so you cannot serve us because you cannot find us. We're not in the US like physically. And number two is that we don't respond to any of these emails. Yeah, we just delete them. And I guess they can never find us, so they cannot sue us because they cannot serve us. And I guess in this way, like this kind of works to our advantage. Yeah. But I mean, yes, if you are in US with an office and all, then you do need to really like be very careful with legality because in the US, like they love to sue people.
Yeah. Jen, one thing I wanted to ask is about partners. When we talk about expansion, one thing that we usually advise founders is to work with partners in those different markets, right? Whether it's US or whether you are expanding to Indonesia or Australia, find a partner or a few partners who can help you in that market, right? To reach the market and that as a go-to-market strategy through partnerships. Is that something you thought of when you expanded to the US so that you kind of get partners from the US who would understand the market better, who would have connections in the market? Is that something you thought about as well?
Back then, like we were pretty naive because we were first time founders and we were young and foolish. So you're like, oh, we can just do it by ourselves. We have money anyway, which is not a lot actually. So so I think back then we were pretty naive. I would say yes and no. Probably if
Hmm.
let's say there are certain markets that are very closed off. So I have a founder friend. He's the founder of this company called Cashier. So they do like POS system. And he did
Yeah,
share
I
with
know.
me that yeah, so he did share with me that Thailand is actually a very closed off country where they trust their locals a lot. They support local brand. So I think like he was sharing that if let's say it's a market like Thailand, maybe it's good to go in with a partner or at least like to work with the locals because they can bring you in and you are able to navigate the local landscape a lot easier. I think for the US, specific for our case, there wasn't a lot of existing big players like in the space for pet industry. I think there were like influencer marketing agency, but more for human side. And there were talent agencies for dogs, but we are operating in a very different space. So we don't really have somebody that can partner up per se. But I think like back then, Singapore government, which is EDB, SGN, like they were very, very helpful in giving us, providing us with resources, like pointing us to the right place to get help, or even linking us up with our first real estate agent when we were renting our first apartment. So I think there's definitely a lot of resources out there that you need to actively search for. But I guess to a certain extent, because we do speak English as one of our first language, and the way that Singaporeans work, I would say is also fairly similar to Americans to a certain extent. Like I think we're pretty westernized. There isn't much challenges as opposed to if let's say today I were to go into a market like Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia where there's a lot of localized context. So I think it really depends on number one, the market that
Sure.
you're going into, and number
Yeah,
two is the space that you're operating in. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you very much. I think that makes a lot of sense. There are certain markets where Of course, partners would help, but you could also navigate to some extent. But there are certain markets where there are a lot more complications, including language barriers. You would need local support. There's one more question here from Iris. If there's a company planning to expand in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, would you suggest them to set up the office in Malaysia? Is it difficult to set up office there?
I think like right now there's a lot of Singapore companies, right, that are setting up HQ in Malaysia because I think there are a lot of talents in Malaysia actually. And to be honest, like I think they have good attitude and I'm very impressed with some of like, their work ethics and stuff. So I think like it's definitely a growing market. In fact, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities in KL in the next 5 to 10 years. It feels like Singapore like ten years ago, where there's going to be a lot of growth. So yeah, so I think like yes, but if let's say you want to target US clients, right, there need to be somebody that is able to talk to the client in a very strategic manner. So right now, right, the way that we work is that I and my co-founder and I will still be the one to lead strategic discussion with our client. So, like when we pitch to the client, we do have the local context, we have a lot of conversation. So it feels like a muscle to us where we are able to just like share like experiences, what is working, what wouldn't work with the client. So there needs to be somebody that at least is able to have such conversation from a very strategic and high level with the client. But when it comes to the executional implementation, for instance, right now, like we are doing paid ads, like running, like Meta ads, Google ads for our clients. We are the one that goes in with the strategic recommendation. My team member in Malaysia, KL, comes in with his technical recommendation. So I think it's a little bit of both. So I would say that it's a yes and no. If let's say you are the one that is able to have very high level conversation with the client, your client trusts you, because you are an expert in this space that you're operating in, I don't see why not to not hire from Malaysia. Yeah, but for me, it's like I strongly believe that like A plus players only want to work with A plus players. So you still must be able to pay above market salary. Yeah, so that's why for us, like it's 100% work from home, and we pay like 5 digits monthly salary, and we also have like commission and bonuses, things like that lah. So I think like if let's say the package is good enough, you are a good boss, it's a decent company, it's not toxic, like good people will want to join you. So I think yeah, at the end of the day, the quality of the people is very important, especially if you're running a company like ours where human is the tech. Yeah, like human is the resource lah, the talents are the resource. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I hope I answered that question. But
And
sorry, so
I
is
could
it
just add I could
yeah.
just add that we, as a platform for founders and freelancers, we support registering companies, initiating businesses in multiple markets. In about 15 markets, we do this, and Malaysia is one of our markets as well. So, Iris, if you need help, we are happy to help. I can see Emil from our team has commented as well. Emil and our team can certainly help with Malaysia and also with regional structures, right? Sometimes you may look at Malaysia set up and maybe a Singapore entity or a Thailand entity, and we've worked with founders who are looking at different structures for different reasons, for market entry, for cost reasons, etc. So certainly we can help you there, Iris. I'll move to the Q&A section, Jane. There are a few questions there. I think the first question, I guess you've already answered, but I'll still mention. So Singapore and US as markets, while Malaysia as execution center. But I think we've touched on this to a fair degree, though.
I
Uh,
also want to point out that we do have clients in Malaysia as well. So we
Malaysia
are
as well.
so
It's a
correct.
Malay
Yeah, so we
market
are
as well.
operating.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. The next one, in your case, why did you want to expand to the US? Whose idea was it? I think you were thinking of the market size, right? It's a bigger market, and you wanted to see if you had a chance in that market. But if you want to touch on this, you could. Otherwise, we could move to the next.
mean, just very quickly, right? I think in the beginning of the business, like we got to know about this thing called VC and startup. And we were like, ooh, okay, like very exciting. People give you money to like, live to grow your company. Sounds like a good deal. So when it comes to VC and startup, you need to be able to make a lot of money for them. In fact, 100 million in annual revenue in 7 years is sort of like the benchmark. And I think that's why, like we thought about US because US is the largest market. I think back then, like all of us agreed that Singapore is a good market is a good starting market, but not as an eventual market because it's still a very small country unless you are in the finance space, maybe. Yeah, but I think like at least within the pet space, we all always knew that US was the biggest. And so it was sort of like a no-brainer for us to go there and, like to grow the company, to raise the next round. But I mean, along the way, like things shift, priorities change. So right now, instead of trying to grow as a startup and being very reliant on third party, we are profitable right now and we are just self-sustaining as a business. It's sort of like a lifestyle business. And that's why we came back to Singapore as well, because every dollar counts when you're bootstrapping. Yeah, so I would say, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. The next question, I think we've spoken about that, talk about business registration, accounting, and compliance side in the US for Singapore business, but we've touched on that. And if you have detailed questions, you could also connect with Jane and she could connect her co-founder. And us as a platform, Do a Circle also does this. This is registrations, accounting, payroll, taxation in multiple markets. You can also get in touch with us as well. Anna from Singapore has a question. Is insurance a challenge in US?
Challenge. In fact, I didn't have insurance when I was in the US because it's too
Right.
expensive. So what happens is that when I come back to Singapore, I will do everything. I will do like my dental. I'll go and clean my teeth. I will do my medical checkup. So very lucky to be in Singapore where we can actually afford medical care and insurance. I think that's also the point of Dual Circle where it's like a global insurance. But yes, I think it is extremely expensive to be on a corporate insurance plan. So that's one. And even if you're on like a state insurance plan, which is honestly shit, it's still very expensive. Like expect to pay like a few hundreds in USD each month for shit coverage. So I think one of the idea or opportunities that we were thinking of previously, just as founders being founders, like why are there no insurance for immigrants or foreigners, right? Because it's so expensive. But we came to the conclusion that there's a very huge space, but it is a very tough problem to crack, just because like the incumbents are earning so much money that they would actually block innovations like this. So I think it's a little bit like regulations, a little bit like being the market being monopolized by people like United Health, and so yeah, I guess like I don't have an answer to that, but yes, insurance is very expensive, and I would do everything when I come back to Singapore. Yeah.
The next question, would love to hear about running business with your husband. I think you said don't mind talking about it. Our topic today is not that, but if you want to take a minute or so, you can touch on that, how the experience has been. I mean, some people don't even want to have a co-founder. They want to run their business by themselves. In your case, you have a co-founder, and that's your husband. So, yeah, how has that been?
It's like there's good and bad. Okay, the good thing, let's talk about the good thing first. The good thing is that you know that he will always have your back. Like he would never, okay, this is nuance, but he would never betray you. He will always look out for you, and he truly cares for you and the business because you guys are both in it together, right? Like if this fucks up, like both of you are fucked. So sorry for all the profanities, but it is that extreme, right? Because all of the eggs are in one basket. Like if the company goes down, like that's it for the household. So I think like you always have someone at your back. You can have conversation and discussion anywhere, like when you're having dinner, when you're chilling, you're in the car, or just anywhere. So like you're literally you're always together, so discussions can happen on a very sporadic basis. I think the bad thing is that you are always gonna argue with your co-founder, just like any other businesses, like even with your bosses, with your colleagues. And I think the reason you guys have argument is because you truly care for the business, right? So that's why you have arguments and conflict. And I guess like to a certain extent, when you are having conflict or arguments, you are still stuck in the same space, and it can get very challenging. Especially if you're someone that needs space, like or if let's say you are in New York, it's dangerous for you to go out at night alone, or you have nowhere else to go because you have no friends. I think that's where all the challenges comes in. So, uh, I mean, yeah, it is like it can be quite challenging lah. And I think any founder that say otherwise and says that oh it's perfect and amazing, right, is talking nonsense. Like it's yeah, like it's lying to you. It's very challenging. And I think eventually you really just have to work it out. And for us, like it took us like 5 to 6 years to really work it out. And it's just a roller coaster ride. Yeah. So
Yeah.
mm.
Thanks. Next question from Chang. Now that you are in Singapore, do you still have physical presence in the US?
And no. So like depending on what's your definition of physical presence. So we do have a business entity in the US as well that's operating. We have employees in the US that is operating with us, that is helping us on certain clients. And I do make occasional trips back to New York every now and then to attend events, meet clients, stuff like that. But I would say it's not like I'm based there. And one of the reasons why we also made the call to come back to Singapore was that when we were in US, a lot of the discussions were actually happening online because our clients were not based in New York or they were not based in Las Vegas. They were based in like Texas, Miami, Florida, New Jersey. They were everywhere. So a lot of discussions and meetings were still happening online anyways. So that's why we thought that what's the point of being in the US just for the sake of being there, other than time zone. Yeah, so I think that was also one of the reasons why we decided to come back and only to make occasional trips back to US. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Jen. I think we've touched on all questions. Chang has shared his WhatsApp number as well. But at the same time, Jane has shared her LinkedIn. So, Chang, you can get in touch with Jane through LinkedIn, maybe. Yeah, I think we had lots of questions, Jane. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to mention before we wrap up things?
I think like I guess my last, like ending note would be that for anyone who is
Mm-hmm.
thinking of doing it, I think anyone can do it. Anyone can fly to US, anyone can expand to a new country, as long as you plan it out. So like don't be afraid. Don't think that oh shit, like I don't have money or like my business is very small or I'm not gonna make it. I'm not as smart as like other people. But honestly, like you are more capable than you think you are. I think this is like something that my friend told me when I was contemplating whether do I want to start my business, and it really stuck with me. So here I am telling all of you that you're more capable than you think you are. People that has when I'm not smarter than any of you. And I'm pretty sure some of you have a lot of resources, are smart as well. So if you want to try, just try. Don't have any regrets. I think that's very important. And if let's say you're thinking of starting a business like this year or even next year, again, like just give it a shot, just try. Don't be afraid. I think the last thing you want is to regret anything and thinking that, oh shit, I should have started when I was younger. Yeah. So I think just take a leap of faith and just do it. And you would never know where it will lead you. And even if it fail, like what's the worst that could happen? Right? Yeah. I think that is probably gonna be the ending note lah for everybody.
Thank you very much, Jane. I think that's inspirational, and that's also what we need for our founders, the audience who's here today. And also, this event is recorded, so this goes online for our members, and it will be consumed by many founders and entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, freelancers, and they need this encouragement. So, thank you very much for encouraging, empowering, and supporting the community, Jane, and taking your time for this. I remember when we had this chat, you're quite ready. to share your experiences, and I mean that has to be appreciated. You are a busy founder, co-founder, running a business, but still you have time for the community to share your learnings, experiences, and that's highly appreciated. Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you to everyone who joined today. And we will see everyone next week as well from a 0 to 1. Thanks, everyone. Bye.